Ended with the NGen Caledon 400 held at Veppena in the Free State. In the 250cc class, a dogfight was expected between Chris Dodd and Alfie Cox.
Well, I've been very unfortunate in the sprint series that I had a breakdown at the one race down in Natal in Eston, and I've thrown away one race, and you cannot throw any away. So I'm lying second at the moment, and with a bit of luck today, if the guy that's leading, Chris Dodd, if he breaks down and doesn't finish today, and I do finish, I can win the sprint series.
As usual, the starting order for the race proper was determined by a time trial through the streets of Veppena, giving the riders and drivers a last chance to test their race setup and the spectators an opportunity to see the races in action at close range. Going into the race, the championship positions in two categories still had to be decided. In the 250cc class, Chris Dodd on the Winston Yamaha would have to keep a wary eye on Alfie Cox on his Castrol Honda, who was only 12 points behind. In the over 250 class, Errol Dalton on his Lesotho Office Equipment Kawasaki was in a strong position, and nothing short of disaster was going to keep the title from him. In the 200 class, local hero Graham McLaughlin on another Lesotho Office Equipment Kawasaki had Alex Vowles on his Aunt Alex Dairy Kawasaki breathing down his neck, and battalion Steve Stothberg on a Winston Yamaha could also be a danger. Although the motorcycles and cars took part in the time trial together, they would follow separate routes over a clover format during the race. The three loops of the clover would see the competitors travel a total distance of just over 350 kilometers. It was a sunny day, but the terrain was wet and muddy in places after the rain of the previous few days, conditions the bikers would revel in. As was expected, Jeremy Davies won the time trial and first starting position, with 500 championship leader Errol Dalton second and Barry Cole third.
Good to be in front, but I'm happy where I am. I rode hard in the time trial, so I'm glad to be here. I hope I can stay here the whole day.
Jeremy Davies took advantage of his first position in the starting order and blasted away, trying to put as much pressure as possible on Errol Dalton. Davies on the Castrol Honda tried to open up as big a lead as he possibly could, forcing Errol Dalton to go flat out, but Dalton wasn't prepared to throw his championship lead out the window and took care not to make any mistakes. While the other competitors were treading their way carefully through the ruts and over the hills, Alfie Cox was going hard on his Castrol Honda in pursuit of a points advantage over Chris Dodd. The conditions underfoot were excellent for off-road racing, with the rain resulting in soft surfaces and a minimum of dust. Willie Ireland on his Super Tyres Suzuki was racing hard to catch Alfie Cox for a 250 class win, while Saki Nemon on his Sun City Kawasaki was looking for a 200 class win. The wind was blowing hard in the face of Jeremy Davies as he raced for that overall win, but misfortune would strike later, and he was airlifted to hospital with a broken leg. 250 championship leader Chris Dodd had already won his class in 4 events, and all he was aiming for was a good finish to clinch the title. Errol Dalton's Lesotho Office Equipment Kawasaki was purring like a cat. Willie Ireland was still concentrating hard on catching Alfie Cox in the 250 class. Richard Manning on his Winston Yamaha was leading the 200 class, while Graham McLaughlin was behind him on his Lesotho Office Equipment Kawasaki and reveling in his hometown conditions. He was the only rider to finish every event in the championship. There were 4 refueling points along the route, and this is Wessel Delport on his Yamaha at one of them. Wessel would finish 35th overall and 7th in the 500 class. And this is Clifford Bennett on his privately entered KTM at the refueling point. He would finish 25th overall and 4th in the 500 class. Meanwhile, Alfie Cox on his Castrol Honda was merrily riding away from the opposition. He already has 3 victories under his belt this season. Ireland on his Super Tyres Suzuki was still chasing hard, but losing ground all the way to Cox, and some friendly directions from the spectators didn't really help. Richard Manning Manning on his Winston Yamaha was still third on the road and leading the 200 class. While the leading 500 class rider was still Errol Dalton on his Lesotho Office Equipment Kawasaki. With the demise of Jeremy Davies, he could afford to take it easy. His teammate Graham McLaughlin was lying second in the 200 class, but needed only a third position to take the championship. Alex Vowles on his Aunt Alex Dairy Kawasaki was lying third, but was not content and was trying hard for second. Alfie Cox was determined to wipe out that 12-point deficit between him and Chris Dodd, while Willie Island was still going for that overall win. These two were now first and second on the road. Richard Manning was still leading and charging hard in the 200 class and was third on the road, although he had no title hopes left. Errol Dalton had things all his own way in the 500 class and only had to stay in the race to become the champion. Graham McLaughlin was chasing Richard Manning and lying fifth, still guarding his rear and his second position. Chris Dodd was lying 10th and 4th in the 250 class and had to race hard to keep his championship hopes alive. Alfie Cox crossed the line first in the end, followed by Willie Island and Richard Manning. We spoke to Cox afterwards.
This race is always one of the best races we have of the year. We were lucky to have rain here. It's been raining here for the last few days, and the conditions were excellent, and the people really go out and do their best. The marking was unbelievable. You couldn't go wrong today, and it was a real racing course.
Graham McLaughlin, second in class, gave him the 1993 200cc off-road sprint title. Chris Dodd's fourth in class made him the 250 champion, while Errol Dalton's easy 500cc victory gave him the class championship.